Hello and welcome to today's video, the first substantive video of the class, Introduction to International Relations. What I want to talk to you about today is the way that we are going to approach the subject matter of international relations, what this subject matter is, international relations, and why everything you think you know about how the world works is completely wrong. Well, that might be slightly overstating things, but I do think I'm going to give you today a different way to think about how the world works, some different ways to understand how the world works, the ways to understand the world that we're going to be using in this class. So, what are international relations? International relations are the ways that states, that countries, get along with each other or don't get along with each other, as the case may be. The most extreme example, of course, of not getting along with each other is going to war, and so we are going to talk about war in this class. Why did World War I happen? Why did World War II happen? Why do wars continue happening in human history? But we're also going to talk about the opposite of war. We're also going to talk about not conflict, but cooperation. How do people, when they're organized into states, manage to get along with one another? How do they form international friendships? How do they form alliances? How do human beings create peaceable circumstances for themselves? So this is not just a class about death, killing, war, and all of those evil things. There are some nice things too in the class. So, a concept or idea or term that we're going to be using a lot in this class is theory, the notion of theory. We're going to talk about different theoretical understandings of international politics, and we really need to think about why that is. Why do we need to know this term theory? What even is a theory in this context? Theory, of course, is a term that is commonly associated with what we might call the natural or the hard sciences, those scientific enterprises, those scientific endeavors that study things like particles and chemicals and other substances, chemistry, in physics, in the so-called hard sciences. But the way that we use theory, or that we think about theory in this class, is a little different from the way that people think about theory in the so-called hard sciences. So we'll be using this term theory, and in many ways the aspirations of theories we're going to talk about in this class are going to be similar to theories that you might have heard about in your natural science classes. Theories such as cell theory, the theory of evolution, germ theory, and the theories we're going to be talking about, they similarly want to help us to understand the world. But the world that they're talking about, the theories in this class, is the social world. This is a class of social science, and the social world is very different from the natural world, from the world of biology, from the world of chemistry, from the world of physics. And so there are some very important wrinkles in how we'll use this term theory in this class compared to how you might be used to it in other classes. In fact, I'm going to argue to you that it's really, really difficult to use theories in the social world such as the world of international relations. In fact, it's so difficult that you might well reasonably wonder, many people do wonder, why use theories at all? What is the point of using theories to study international politics? Why don't you just describe events? You know, maybe you could know all that you need to know about international politics from just reading the newspaper or just from studying history, just carefully recording what happens, keeping a careful log of what happens, and saying, there, I understand international relations, I've studied war, I've studied peace, I've just kept up with specific events. Why not do that? Why do you need to go to this additional step of coming up with theories? Well, the reason that we need to do this is it is not so simple as just saying, let's study events. Apart from anything else, there are so many events that you can't possibly keep up with the number that exist. Let's think about just the period of time since the end of the First World War. About 100 years since the end of the First World War. During that period of time, there's been a varying number of countries, more countries as time has gone on, as empires have fallen away, as countries have gained their independence. And so today we have 195 countries. So we've got 100 years since the end of the First World War. We've got 195 countries. Every country is interacting with every other country across multiple dimensions, across economics, across, immigration, across questions of war, questions of peace, questions of diplomacy. So we've got 195 countries, 100 years, multiple areas of interaction. Each country perceives each interaction in a specific way. You know, the way that one country sees one interaction that it's had might be very different from the way that the other country sees that interaction. So we've got 100 countries, we've got 195 countries, over 100 years, multiple areas of interaction, multiple ways to think about or perceive each of those interactions. That's a lot of interactions. That's a lot of just recording events that we would need to do if we didn't use theories. So one major thing that we need theories to do for us is to tell us which of those interactions, which of those perceptions of those interactions, which things that are going on between which countries are truly important, and which ones can we maybe put to one side and not study so closely. That's the first thing we need theory for, and that's why we can't just study what happened. So how then should we think about what these theories are? How would we define what a theory is? Theory is basically a lens for seeing the world, like a pair of glasses that you put on that makes the world look differently. In fact, they're like super glasses, like virtual reality glasses. They create the world for you. They're a pair of glasses that has a big arrow pointing at parts of what you see, saying this is important, and another arrow saying that's not important, even though it might be bright and vivid and moving very quickly. That thing's not important. That thing doesn't cause anything important to happen. Look at this. Don't look at that. That's what a theory is. At least that's what a good theory is. And where do they come from? Well, we can get theories from two places. There are two ways that we can come up with theories. Many people call this the top-down way of creating theories and the bottom-up way of creating theories. In the top-down way of creating a theory, you build your virtual reality theory glasses purely from your imagination. You have a flash of inspiration where you say, I think the world works in this way. I'm going to build my virtual reality glasses to point at these features of the world all the time and to consistently ignore these other features of the world. And then I'm going to see how good these virtual reality glasses, this theory, is to help me understand what's going on around me. That's the top-down way of coming up with a theory. What about the bottom-up way of coming up with a theory? Well, in the bottom-up way of coming up with a theory, you look at the world around you, you observe it for a long period of time, you collect a lot of data, and from this data you start to see that certain things go along with certain other things. Whenever you see this one thing in the world, this other thing is also present. And so you hypothesize, you make an educated guess that this one thing is related to this other thing. And maybe we never see this other thing unless we also see this one thing. And so that's another way of coming up with a theory, a bottom-up way of coming up with a theory. In actual fact, that's not a real sustainable dichotomy. Most theories have elements of the top-down approach and elements of the bottom-up approach. A theory that always operated from the bottom up would never get anywhere, for the reasons that I've just talked about. I mean, the world is so complicated that you would end up just associating random things with each other. That wouldn't be a very useful theory. So a theory that had no top-down element wouldn't work. Bottom-up theories on their own can't work. By the same token, if you've just purely imagined a theory, you've just had a flash of inspiration and you never bother to look at the world and to see, does this theory actually bear some relationship to what's going on? That also is not going to be sustainable. So most theories are some combination of the top-down approach and the bottom-up approach, some combination of imagination that's then mixed with data and observation. That's how we come up with theories. Okay, but maybe you're thinking, Prof, I'm a total super genius. I've come up with a theory. I understand how the world works, and I'm going to prove to everyone that my theory is the best theory. Class is over, right? Wrong. And I'll tell you why next time.